Okay, so as I said, Unit 5, we described before. Skill number 3, discussing relative performance, how to compare between a device or a machine after and before the improvements made to it. ازاي نقارن بين الآلة قبل وبعد التعديل اللي حصل عليه. Today we're going to discuss skill number 4, describing capabilities and limitations. After these improvements, what are the capabilities of the machine and what are its limitations؟ بعد ما عملنا بقى التغييرات دي، ايه هي القدرات بتاعتها وايه هي الحدود بتاعتها، حدها ايه، اخرها ايه. So describing capabilities and limitations. Let's describe capabilities and limits. Before we do any adjustments, any improvements to any machine, we first do some trials. قبل ما نعمل اي تغيير او اي تطوير في اي آلة، بنعمل الاول شوية تجارب، بنجرب عليها حاجات so that we could know what is the extent to the improvement that could be done to this machine. عشان نعرف ايه هو الحد بتاع التغييرات اللي احنا ممكن نطبقها على الآلة دي. So we have a phrase like subjected to. Subjected to means exactly the same as exposed to. يعني معرض ليه. نعرض الحاجة لضغط مثلا محدد. Subjected to means exposed to. Like in the first sentence, frogs were subjected to increasing heat for the scientists to know if they would jump or just try to adapt and die. You know, of course, about this experiment that they wanted to know the resistance of the frogs to heat. And what are they going to do? They put them in something that was increasing in heat, and it was opened, so the frogs could have jumped any minute. But instead, they kept on standing in this thing and kept adjusting their body temperature so that they could adapt to the heat. كان في تجربة إن بيحطوا الضفدع ويعلوا الحرارة، وكان المكان مفتوح، يعني ممكن الضفدع ينط في أي وقت، ولكن ده ما حصلش. الضفدع كل مرة كان بيقعد يغير من درجة حرارته ويغير من درجة جسمه لحد ما مات في الآخر وما قدرش يتحمل الحرارة. ف here we put frogs were subjected to increasing heat. تم تعريضهم لحرارة متزايدة. What about the second sentence? The scientists subjected the frogs to an increasing heat for them to know if the frogs would jump or just try to adapt and die. This is the same sentence, but the difference is that in the first sentence, the verb subjected was next to the preposition to. حطينا الكلمتين جنب بعض، subjected وكانوا لازقين في بعض. But the second sentence, we separated between the verb subjected and the preposition to with the object, the frogs. So what is the difference here? The difference here is that in the first sentence, it is a passive sentence, مبنية للمجهول. But the second one is an active one, مبنية للمعلوم. فاحنا ناخد بالنا ان لما يكون الجملة مبنية للمجهول subjected to exposed to بيبقى الاتنين جنب بعض، ما بيفترقوش عن بعض الفعل والحرف الجر. But if it is an active sentence, an active voice مبني للمعلوم, we separate between these two words by the object. اللي هو the frogs المفعول. Okay. After we have done these trials، بعد ما عملنا التجارب دي وعرضنا الآلة لحاجات معينة عشان نشوف مدى التغييرات اللي احنا ممكن نعملها. What do we do after this? When we subjected it to lots of things to know the extent to improvements, we then say, okay, then after these trials, I think that the improvements made are going to make this machine suitable for so and so. نيجي نقول تمام، بعد اللي احنا عملناه واللي احنا جربناه على الآلة ده، الآلة هتبقى مناسبة بعد التطوير إن احنا نستخدمها في كذا. So what are the words that we use for this? Two words, intended for and suitable for. Both of these words mean the same thing. Intended for يعني المقصد منها كذا. Suitable for يعني مناسبة ليه. So it is typically the same thing. But we cannot use these two words or these two phrases interchangeably, but in some contexts. ما ينفعش نستخدم الكلمتين دول مكان بعض في أي جملة غير في سياق محدد بس. الكلمتين اللي فوق، التو phrases اللي فوق، كان ينفع نستخدمهم ونبدل بينهم subjected to exposed to. لو جينا نقول frogs were exposed to increasing heat هتنفع. The scientists exposed the frogs to an increasing heat هتنفع. But intended for and suitable for, we cannot use both of them interchangeably except in specific contexts في سياق محدد. Like the first one, for example, the Pepsi was intended for the guests to drink. Why the hell did you drink it? لو احنا عندنا ضيوف وعندنا بيبسي وحد شرب البيبسي بتاعته، هنقول لهم البيبسي دي المفروض كانت للضيوف، موجودة المقصد منها كان للضيوف، انت شربتها ليه؟ Here we cannot say the Pepsi was suitable for the guests' drink. We cannot say suitable for here. لأن suitable for here معناها إنها مناسبة ليهم بس هي مش مناسبة ليه. حاجة هتحصل له مثلا لو هو شربها. فهنا مش هينفع نستخدم suitable for مكان intended for. But the second sentence, some YouTube videos are intended for children. يعني المقصد من عملها إنها الأطفال يتفرجوا عليها. Yes, this one we can use suitable for in. Some YouTube videos are suitable for children. In this case, yes, we can use intended for and suitable for interchangeably. But in the first one, we cannot do this. So we have to pay attention to the meaning of the sentence before we could choose any of these phrases. Okay. After we have determined the use of it, what are the grounds that we decided that this use is good for this machine? بناء على ايه احنا قلنا ان الاستخدام بعد التطويرات هيبقى ده. This is because we in the trials we experimented the resistance of this machine. في التجارب اللي احنا كنا بنعملها واللي احنا كنا بنعرض ليه الآلة قبل ما نعرف ايه هي التغيرات، احنا قسنا بيها الريزيستنس بتاعتها، المقاومة بتاعتها هتبقى ايه، هل مقاومتها كبيرة، هل هي معدية الليميت مثلا اللي هم كانوا متوقعينه ولا لا. So this is resistance. We have some vocabs and phrases that we could use in order to describe resistance of a machine. We have, for example, cope with. Cope with means the same thing as withstand, means the same thing as resist. التلاتة نفس المعنى. These we can use them interchangeably. So we could say, for example, at first, the frog was able to withstand the increasing heat, but when it reached a specific limit, the frog was unable to cope with it and died. في الأول الضفدع كان قادر إن هو يقاوم الحرارة المتزايدة، ولكن لما وصلت لحد معين ما قدرش برضه نفس النظام، ما قدرش يتحامل معاها، ما قدرش يمشي معاها ومات، ما قدرش يتحملها. Here we can use both of them interchangeably. We can say at first the frog was able to cope with the increasing heat, so and so and so. The frog wasn't able to withstand it and died, or resisted. يعني التلاتة ينفع نستخدمهم مع بعض، أي حاجة منهم. So this means يتحمل. cope with يعني يتكيف مع. withstand يعني يتحمل. resist يعني يقاوم. The three. Okay. Then so the machine could resist a specific limit. ممكن تقاوم limit محدد, or it could exceed it. It could exceed the expectations that we put for it. ممكن تعدي كمان التوقعات اللي احنا عملناها. قلنا مثلا انها مش هتتحمل ضغط قدره كذا ولكن هي عدته. So what are the phrases that we can use in this situation? We have also three: exceed, surpass, and go beyond. معناهم ان هم عندوا الليفل، عندوا الليميت اللي احنا بنتكلم عليه. exceed تجاوز، surpass تجاوز، go beyond تجاوز، نفس النظام برضه. The heat exceeded the limit. Here we can use them. The heat surpassed the limit. The heat went beyond the limit. يبقى الثلاثة هنا ينفع نستخدمهم interchangeably. Okay. Now we move to the ability. After we did these adjustments and improvements to the machine, what the machine is able to do and what it is not able to do. The ability, we use three phrases. Two of them are the major thing. ثلاثة اتنين منهم هما الأساسيين. Able to and capable of. Able to, capable of, and can all mean the same thing. للمقدرة على يستطيع. So the sentence we have here is Frog was able to resist the heat for some time. الضفدع كان قادر إن هو يقاوم الحرارة لوقت محدد. Okay, so here we have able to, capable of, and can. Inability. What are the things that this machine, after improvements, would not be able to do it or to function with it? We just negate these three expressions above. بننفيهم بس. So it's going to be unable to, incapable of, and can't. All of them again mean the same thing. The sentence we have is eventually frog became incapable of resisting the heat. في الآخر في النهاية الضفدع ما قدرش يقاوم الحرارة. Here we have to note something, that there is a difference between the use of able to and incapable of. Able to, the verb that came after able to is in the infinitive, فعل في المصدر. But the one after incapable of is with ing. فآخره ing. يبقى الفعل اللي بعد incapable of فآخره بيبقى ing. و able to فآخره بيبقى مصدر. These are the slides for today, and these are the words and phrases that we have to memorize and have to know the meaning of so that we could describe the capabilities and limitations of machines after improvement. Any questions before we move to the exercises? Describing capabilities and limitations. Number 8. Look at So let's continue. 8a. Look at the photos and read the extracts from the story of John Paul Stab by Nick T. Spock and answer the following questions. Before we move to the extracts, we are going to read the questions so that we would know where the answer is. Number 1. When and where do you think it took place? Number 2. What do you think the aim of the test was? Number 3. What do you think John Stapp's profession was? Number 4. What equipment do you think was used? And number 5. What do you think happened in the experiment? With 5 seconds to go, Stab activated the sled's movie cameras and prepared for the shock. Sled is the related to the sledge, اللي هي المزلاج, like the one you see in the photo. What they are doing here is called a rocket sled. مزلاج بتاع صاروخ. شايفين كده دي؟ ده المفروض they fastened a man to it and they wanted him to go on track with the rocket sled بالمزلاج ده, وفي صواريخ ومعمول فيه صواريخ ويمشي بالمزلاج ده يشوفوا حاجة كده. فاحنا هنشوف يشوفوا ايه. Sonic Wind's 9 rockets detonated with a terrific roar. Detonated means exploded. انفجرت. With a terrific roar, roar is like the roar of a lion, بصوت ضخم كده. Sending out trails of fire and blasting Stab down the track. Trails means sparkles. بعتت نار في كل حتة كده. And blasting Stab down the track. Blasting means causing to move very quickly in a specified direction. And in that case, it is down the track, which means along the track. يبقى أول ما الصاروخ انفجر كده بصوت رهيب, قام جاية قاعدة تطلع نار اللي هي المزلاج اللي في الصورة دي, ودفعت ستاب اللي كان قاعد في الكرسي بقوة على طول المسار. Sonic Wind hit the water brake. The water brake, it is a type of fluid used to absorb mechanical energy. حاجة كده زي العائق اللي بيحطوه في طريق الحاجات المسرعة لما بيجوا يعملوا تجارب. water brake بيبقى water وفيه some chemical substances, بيبقى فيه شوية مواد كيميائية علشان لما الحاجة تخبط فيها بتمتص شوية من الطاقة الميكانيكية. So, Sonic Wind hit the water brake. The rear of the sled tore away. The rear is the back part of something. الجزء الخلفي. يبقى الجزء الخلفي من المزلاج اتكسر واتشال كده منها. The front continued. الجزء الأمامي كمل. Hardly slowing at all until it hit the second water brake. يبقى لما Sonic Wind دي هي اسم المزلاج. لما Sonic Wind خبطت في الووتر بريك الأولى, الجزء الخلفي اتكسر والجزء الأمامي فضل مكمل زي ما هو من غير ما يتباطأ خالص لحد ما خبطت الووتر بريك التانية. Then spray exploded from the back of Sonic Wind. Spray, this is the spray, the white thing you see in the picture. Exploded from the back of the Sonic Wind. It stopped like it had hit a concrete wall. أول ما قام جاي مخبوطة في الووتر بريك التانية دي, وقفت في مكانها كأن لما احنا نكون ماشيين بسرعة كده واندفعنا في حاجة نقوم جايين واقفين في ثانية كده, مش اللي هي تباطأت. يعني السونيك ويند ما قعدتش تتباطأ لحد ما وقفت, لا وقفت فجأة على طول. At the same moment it hit it. Okay, is it understood? Now we're going to read the extract. In the late 1940s and early 50s, the United States Air Force carried out a series of experiments to explore how much physical stress the human body could withstand. A key aim was to test how much G-force pilots were able to cope with and see what would happen if they exceeded the limits. Led by Air Force Doctor John Paul Stabb, a number of spectacular tests were carried out at Edwards Air Force Base in California, a location suitable for the experiments thanks to its 600-meter rail track, especially designed for high-speed rocket tests. A rocket sled, capable of reaching speeds approaching the sound barrier, was mounted on the track. On top of the sled, named Sonic, researchers fixed a seat, intended for an abnormally brave volunteer. Refusing to give the dangerous job to a member of his team, the man in the hot seat was John Stabb himself. Over several runs, Stabb was subjected to progressively greater extremes of force. Each time he resisted. Eventually, the time came to take the ultimate risk, to surpass what many doctors believed to be a deadly level of G-force. And so, on December 10th, 1954, Stab was strapped onto Sonic Wind for the mother of all rides. Before we proceed, we should know the meaning of G-force. What is the G-force? Does anyone of you know? Okay, so the G-force is the force acting on the body as a result of acceleration or gravity. اسمها قوة التسارع. For example, how an astronaut suffers when launching a rocket. لما يكون في رائد فضاء موجود في صاروخ والصاروخ بيطلع كده، أول ما الصاروخ بيطلع جسمه بيحصل له حاجات، دي اسمها قوة التسارع. The effect it has on the body. التأثير اللي بيبقى موجود على الجسم سببها بيتسبب فيها العجلة أو الجاذبية. Or for example, how pilots feel when the plane drifts away from its straight track. أو لما الطيار يكون سايق الطيارة كده ويقوم جاي منعطف فجأة في حتة، هتلاقي كل جسمه بيروح ناحية وهكذا. Or simply put, like when we are in the bus and the driver suddenly stops or turns left or right. What we feel at that moment is the G-force, whether we're able to control our body not to fall or not. ببساطة كده لما نكون مثلا احنا راكبين أتوبيس أو ميكروباص وفجأة السواق يفرمل، احنا ايه اللي بيحصل لجسمنا؟ بنطلع قدام. هي دي الجي فورس، هي دي قوة التسارع، التأثير اللي العجلة أو الجاذبية بيديها على الجسم. بيبقى لما نكون موجودين في باص أو السواق يوقف فجأة، دي بسبب قوة التسارع. أو لما السواق يحود يمين أو يحود شمال فجأة، دي قوة التسارع برضه. فهي بقى بنستخدمها في ايه دي؟ ان احنا إلى أي درجة هنقدر نقاوم الحاجات اللي بتحصل على جسمنا دي، التأثير اللي على جسمنا ده. هل لما السواق يحود يمين أو شمال هنقع ولا هنفضل في مكاننا؟ هل لما يفرمل فجأة هنقع على اللي قدامنا ولا هنفضل في مكاننا ونتحرك بس حاجة بسيطة؟ This is the G-force. Okay, so let's see. Number one, when and where do you think it took place? It took place in the late 1940s and the late 50s. Edwards Air Force Base in California. يبقى when in the 1940s and late 50s and where? Edwards Air Force Base in California. Number two, what do you think the aim of the test was? To test how much G-force pilots were able to cope with and see what would happen if they exceeded the limits. كانوا عايزين يشوفوا إلى أي درجة الطيارين اللي بيطيروا طيارات والحاجات دي هيقدروا يتحملوا قوة التسارع من غير ما يحصل لجسمهم حاجة، وهل هم هيقدروا يعدوا الليمت بتاعهم ولا لأ. يبقى to test how much G-force pilots are going to be able to cope with and see what would happen if they exceeded the limit. Number three, what do you think John Stapp's profession was? His profession was an Air Force doctor. طبيب في القوات الجوية. Air Force doctor. Number four, what equipment do you think was used? Rockets, a sledge, مزلاج, a seat, and water brakes. Number 5. What do you think happened in the experiment? They reached their goal and knew the limit which a person may reach and they exceeded the limit. ان هم وصلوا المغزى بتاعهم ان هم عرفوا ايه الليميت اللي ممكن الشخص يوصل له وكمان تخطوا الليميت ده. Okay, so this is 8A and we read B. Now let's complete. This completion we have 5 things. No, 6. No, 5, yes. 1.2, 3, 20, 46, and 1015. We have 1. What is the max speed? 2. What is the acceleration from 0 to max speed? وصل من السرعة صفر لأقصى سرعة وصل لها اللي هو السونيك ويند دي في كام ثانية. 3. acceleration force قوة السرعة قوة العجلة. 4. deceleration time التباطؤ قوة التباطؤ بتاعته وصل في قد ايه كام ثانية خدت كام ثانية علشان يبطأ ويقف. and 5. deceleration force قوة التباطؤ. Again we are going to listen to an audio script and this should be easy. That day, Stab was subjected to extremes of force beyond the imagination. When the sled's rockets fired, he shot from 0 to over 1,000 kilometers per hour in just 3 seconds, subjecting him to 20 Gs. When the sled hit the pool of water in the braking zone, it was like hitting a brick wall. Stab slowed from the speed of a bullet to a complete stop in little more than a single second. Incredibly, John Stab survived the ride, although so much blood had rushed into his eyes that he was unable to see for some time afterwards. Before the tests, doctors had believed that human beings were incapable of surviving forces greater than 17 Gs. When the sled hit the water, Stab had pulled a crushing 46 Gs. Now number C. Do you have the answers? Okay. So number 1 max speed is 1015. Number 2 acceleration from 0 to max speed is 3 seconds. Number 3 acceleration force 20 Gs. 4 deceleration time 1.2 seconds. 5 deceleration force 46 Gs. Very good. Number 8 complete the following groups of synonyms using the words in the box. These are the same synonyms that we took in the slides, so it should. Number 1 exposed to a force equals subjected to. What about number 2? Number 2 is cope with, withstand. Okay, what about 3? Yes, very good. Exceed, be, go be means exceed and surpass. Okay, number 4. Yes, suitable for means intended for. Number 5. Yeah, can equal able and able to. And number 6. Yes, can't is unable to and incapable of. So this is number 8. Now we are going to use again the what's in F. Following sentences about wind using the correct form of the word in exercise 8E. Number 1. The bolts fixing the camera up to the sled had to cope with high shear forces. What is the meaning of shear forces? Do you know? C. The shear force is the force in one part of the body in a direction that is the opposite of the direction of another. القوة اللي من الجسم في مكان غير الجسم بتاع الجسم التاني. If they are pushed into each other, it's compression force. لو هما بقى اتضغطوا على بعض اسمها قوة ضغط. يبقى قوة القص عكسها قوة ضغط. Like when it's hot and we use a book or a paper to blow some breeze. لو الحتة حر واحنا ماسكين كتاب أو حاجة وعمالين نهوي على نفسنا. We are holding a part of the paper with our hand, so it is not moving. But the other part is moving in another direction. احنا ماسكين حتة من الكراسة أو من الورقة دي في إيدنا فده مش بيتحرك ولكن الجزء التاني من الورقة بيتحرك في اتجاه تاني. So this is the shear force. Like for example a loaf of bread. If we are holding part of the loaf of bread and we are cutting the other part, the part we are cutting is going to go in another direction and the part that we are holding in our hands are not going to go anywhere. لو احنا ماسكين رغيف عيش أو العيش الطويل ده وجايين نقطعه بنمسك حتة منه والحتة التانية بنقطعها بالسكينة. دي هتروح في حتة والجزء ده هيروح في حتة. This is the shear force. So number one, cope with, like it's written. Number two, the sled's rockets were blank, generating enormous thrust. الصواريخ بتاعة المزلاج كانت نقط بت generate بتولد دفع قوي. thrust يعني دافع push. Well done, capable of, yeah. So yeah, very good, well done. So number two is capable of. Now number three, the pulls at the end of the track where blank stop the sled rapidly. What is it gonna be? Able to. Yes, the pulls at the end of the track were able to stop the sled rapidly. Number four, the skids on the sled had to blank high levels of friction. The skids are the wheels that work as a brake. skid الحتة عاملة زي العجل هي علشان تشتغل. في حد عمال يتنفس بحاجة فظيعة بالراحة. So number four, what is it gonna be? Withstand. Very good. Yeah, withstand. السكيدز احنا قلنا السكيدز حاجة بتعمل وظيفتها كفرامل كده في المزلاج. فهو هنا بيقول ان الجزء ده من المزلاج اضطر او had to، يعني كان محطوط في موقف ان هو لازم resist او withstand high levels of friction، ليفل عالي من الاحتكاك. Okay, number five. At full speed, jump step was blank several tons of air pressure. في أقصى سرعة جامب ستاب اللي كان قاعد على المزلاج ده كان كذا كمية كبيرة من ضغط الهواء. Yes, well done. At full speed, John Stab was subjected to or exposed to several tons of air pressure. Number six, the rear of the sled was blank, resists the shock of deceleration and broke off. الجزء الخلفي من المزلاج كان نقط يقاوم التباطؤ، الشوك بتاعت التباطؤ واتكسر and broke off. Yes, unable to. Well done. So the rear of the sled was unable to resist the shock of deceleration and broke off. Number seven, doctors thought people were blank surviving forces of 17 Gs and above. الدكاترة اعتقدوا إن الإنسان أو الناس بإمكانها كذا. يا رب أنا قلت بإمكان مش بإمكان. What? Again? Okay. Doctors thought people were incapable of surviving forces of 17 Gs and above. 8. John Stapp blank the 17 G limit by a huge margin. Yes, exceeded. هنا بقى نستخدمها في الماضي يبقى exceeded. Yeah, very good. Well done. This is actually gonna be it. This is the end of our session. But before we end it, we want to know what is the assignment. I actually forgot to say it yesterday, so I'm going to say it now. What do you want the assignment to be? Your last assignment.